morning, everybody. I'm Medeline. I'm a codependent and adult child, and I'm from North Carolina, and I will be one of your hosts tonight.
And I am Pat Morgan. I am also an adult child, a codependent. I'm a member of I'm a member of ACA, of CODA, as well as Al-Anon. I live in Southside, Virginia, near Danville, and I will be your other host tonight. In addition to Medeline and I, thank goodness we have got Emily, who is going to be our technical support and get this thing recorded for us.
Welcome officially to the Anatomy of the 12-Step Study Group. The purpose of this whole series is to examine each of the 12 steps in a very basic way. This Zoom meeting is not affiliated with nor endorsed by any specific 12-step program. Also, this 12-step group is not intended as a replacement for having a sponsor or attending other meetings. We know that the 12-step programs may have a different focus as reflected in their version of the 12 steps. However, we believe that regardless of the addiction or problem that brought you into the various rooms of recovery, our common denominator is the solution, the 12 steps. Tonight, we'll focus on step 4. At least we'll get started with step 4. But first, a few reminders. Number 1, over the next few weeks, we'll be looking at steps 4 and 5, looking closely at our former ways of living, and then giving our attention to eliminating the dysfunctional ways in order to create space for new behaviors, new thoughts, and new feelings. And by the way, this was for me a real pivotal step. It changed my whole direction in life. Number 2, we may have some people with us tonight who are new to working the steps. We also may have some who have questions about the ideas and concepts we're going to go over. Several of us, therefore, remain online after the meeting. We'll stay for a few minutes to answer any questions or even to set up a separate time to talk about more difficult topics that our discussion may bring up. Number 3, as a reminder, any 12-step material is accepted in this meeting. However, though non-12-step information may benefit you personally, we ask that you not share it in this meeting. Number 4, we would appreciate it if you would refrain from cross-talking during this session. Number 5, please mute your mic until ready to speak. Number 6, we'll first go over your homework, the introduction to the 4-step chart. Then we'll go over the first 3 columns of step 4. So be sure and have your chart handy and the homework also, whether you printed it out or not. Just be sure you can see it during this session tonight. And number 7, hopefully we'll have some time at the end for any questions you may have. So now let's get started. First, the introduction to the 4th step. Pat?
All right. As y'all know, that 4th step gives us a real opportunity to look at ourselves and explore what's going on inside. You know, the more we know about ourselves, the better the chance is that we can not keep making the same mistakes over and over and over. And that's what I felt like when I first came in here. In that document we gave you, I love the analogy. You know, this 4th step is really like turning on the light switch in a very dark room with no windows. Usually what we've done is we go into that dark room and we keep walking around, we bump into things, we bruise ourselves, we hurt it's just awful because we can't see the furniture. We can't see where to walk. So this inventory really does shed a light on all the stuff that's going on. So it clears up a better path that we can take. The fourth step is not about listing our faults, nor is it there just to complain about what everybody else has done or how we've been abused or how we've been victimized, or what people have done to us or the situations we've gotten, that are all their fault. It's really more about looking at our beliefs, what drives our behaviors, what drives our mistakes. That way we can clearly really understand what's going on so that we don't keep stumbling over it and making the same mistakes over and over and over again. When I first approached this fourth step, very honestly, I was afraid. I was terrified. I had seen those words that said, we're supposed to approach this step fearlessly, and some people may have tried the fourth step. I kind of sort of did it, but I didn't do it fearlessly. And the biggest reason was I was afraid. I came into this program feeling like I was a defect, and when y'all start talking about a defect of character, then, oh my gosh, it's almost like if I took my jacket and zipped it open and go, whoa, here I am, and oh gosh, I didn't want to do that. That's what I was afraid of with the fourth step. What I learned was rather than waiting for my fear to go away, just do the fourth step. I remember my sponsor saying, I don't care if you're afraid of it, just go do it. It's really very simple. So remember that the fourth step, in there, the courage that we have doesn't mean that fear is going to go away before we tackle this thing. The fourth step is not done publicly. Nobody's going to see what you write down. And I tell my sponsees when they come in the door sometimes and they want to hand me their piece of paper, no, I don't want to see that. Let you and I talk about what's on it. So if you're afraid of the fourth step, remember that by yourself. And focus on the fourth step, not the fear of the fifth step. Some people tell me that they don't want to do the fourth step because they don't have time. Well, very honestly, you don't have time. There's usually a reason for the procrastination. And bottom line, what's behind that reasoning is fear, because we're afraid, and so we put it off. Some people come into this recovery program and they put it off because they don't like some of the terms that they hear. And I can remember when I first came in also, these terms like do a fearless and searching moral inventory, the exact nature of your wrongs, and you defects of character. I felt like a defect when I came in here. So those terms really scared me and caused me to back off. One of the things that we can do is we can substitute different concepts for some of those things. For example, instead of doing wrongs, substitute for that things that we would like to have done differently. For defects, we can substitute things like our old habits, our ways of reacting that we wish we would like to change, or we'd like to be free of that concept or that fear, or ways that we want to stop it. The steps aren't asking us to blame or punish ourselves, and I thought it was. It helps us to look at ourselves really more clearly and from a place of compassion, not a place of put down. It frees us, because once we see what's driving our fears and what's driving our resentments and our angers, then we can become the people that we really want to be. Some of us come in this program thinking, I don't want to do this step because it's all their fault. Everybody did this and he did that and she did that. It doesn't matter. If that's what you think, that's okay. Just work the step. One of the things that I think is also very important is to keep it simple. Y'all know that Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson were the co-founders of AA that kind of started this whole thing and pulled some things from the Oxford group. And anyway, one of the things that Bill Wilson said to Dr. Bob before he died was, keep it simple. I like to remember that when I work the 4 steps. Just keep it simple. Do the best that you can with the information that you've got now. Our goal is to uncover some of those ideas that are blocking us from moving forward, from getting to that place of serenity, from getting to that place of empowerment and feeling good of our own skin. We got to get behind that anger and behind the fear and start seeing it first. We want to learn how to do this step so that we can continue to take it, because I do over and over. As things pop up, that's what I do. This is my go-to. I go back to my steps. Okay, Madeline, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Before we specifically look at the columns 1, 2, and 3, I want to say one thing, and that is that when I came into these rooms, I thought something was wrong with me. Yes, I was a shame-based personality. I was full of shame, full of guilt. But the problem was I had not been taught some of the skills I needed to live a mature, healthy, peaceful adult life. It wasn't my fault that I didn't know. It's just I didn't have the teachers. So the nice thing about the whole 12-step process is it taught me taught me the skills I needed to live a life and to be grounded and serene and secure and healthy, a life that I enjoyed and I loved. Okay, do you all have the 4-step chart in front of you? Because I want to go over it with you. Get a piece of paper, and if you will, get a heavier marker, magic marker type thing. So I want you to do something in just a minute. I want you to notice in the printout that there are 3 parts to the chart. A couple pages for resentments, a couple pages for fears, and a couple pages for our conduct. You should have 6 pages basically on the chart. You'll also notice that the metrics on each one of these 3 parts is the same. Those same lines, the same charts, the same columns and rows, all of that is the same all the way through. Now what we're going to do tonight is go over the first 3 columns, column 1, column 2, and column 3. That's resentment, and we're going to do it. I can start with resentments and go through it, but it's the exact same thing when we do fear page, or the exact same thing when we do conduct page. But I'll explain each one of those columns in just a minute. A good place to start when you're doing this one is with column 1, of course, where you put down and list all the people, places, things, and institutions that have irritated you, especially during the resentment page. Now, we asked you to do a little bit of this when we started the program, the whole series. So you already have some ideas about the people that might have irritated you throughout your life. And when you think about that incident, it still gives you a tightness inside of you. It's a little bit of a grudge. It's a yucky feeling inside of you. That's what we want to put on the chart. Now, what we're doing is putting in who, what, where, what, people, places, things, or institutions that irritated us. An institution could be a whole school. It could be a whole family event. It could be a reunion. It could be the church, or it could be something like God that irritated you. It could be a whole neighborhood that irritated you. It's not just people that irritate you. We'll look at the payoffs for holding on to these resentments or fears or conducts. And then we'll also look at what is it costing us if we continue to hold on to them. So your homework for next week is to continue with this chart. You don't have another separate page for your homework. All right, I've got my chart in hand, and I have taken my magic marker and I have drawn a line between columns 3 and columns 4. The reason for that is I want you to only do columns 1, 2, and 3 until we talk about it next week. Now, I know that's not what some of you are going to do. You're going to go ahead and try to fill it out, and that's okay, but we're going to explain columns 4, 5, and 6 next week. Okay, ready? Column 1. And I'm doing the resentment page first. I'm resentful at people, places, things, or situations. Put down 1 or 2 of those people or things that you have held on or have a resentment toward, and just kind of do it with me tonight. Anybody that has irritated you over the past, anything that happened to you that made you a little bit peeved, a little bit upset, put their name or its name or the institution down in that column. Now, in column 2, here's where you list why you put that person down on your chart. Now, note in that column, there's not enough space to write a dissertation or a term paper or a book. So all you put there is a phrase or a name, a word that describes why you put that person down. It could be something like, they made me mad because they tried to control me. You may put the word control down, or you may put the word abandon down. You felt abandoned by them, or you felt judged by them. You don't write a lot in this column, just enough that will remind you later when you do your 5th step with a sponsor or somebody, to remind you why you put that person, place, thing, or institution down on your first column. Column 2. Column 3 has various parts to it because we're affected by those people, places, things, or institutions. And here's where we break that apart. So I've got subdivisions here. First, did that person affect your self-esteem? Did that incident affect your self-esteem? And most of the time we check it. You're not putting words in here, you're just giving it a check. No big deal, just check it. And I imagine most things did affect your self-esteem, so that's usually checked, at least in the people I work with. The second part of column 3 is personal relationships. And I like to divide this one into 2 parts. Personal relationships being the intimate people, the people close to us, and the people not so close, the primary people and the secondary people to us. For instance, if you were irritated at somebody, like your mother called you one morning and fussed at you for something you had done, and all day that day, you were just irritated at everybody that you came into contact with. So it affected you in terms of that person that did it, but it also affected you with the secondary people that you were around all day long. So that one has 2 levels, primary and secondary, people close to you and people in your outer surroundings, outer field. Personal relationships, both intimate and otherwise. The third column is, did that incident affect your material or worldly goods? Let me give you some examples here. I had a sponsee one time who got pregnant when she was in high school. her dad was going to send her to college, but when she got pregnant, he said, either you have an abortion and I send you on to college, or you keep this pregnancy and I will not send you to college. And she had her dad down on her resentment sheet. She got irritated at him, of course. Her decision, by the way, was to keep the pregnancy, a little girl, which she now has grandchildren by the way, but her dad would refuse to help her go to college for years. And he never did, actually. He died, never did help her. But I will tell you the rest of that story is years later, when I met her in recovery, she decided to go back to college on her own, and she now has 2 college degrees, despite the fact that her dad would not help her at all early on. So the resentment toward him did affect her materially. I've also had sponsees who were getting divorces, and the husband or ex-husband was trying to hold on to all the money, hide all the money, wouldn't give her any of the money. So, her resentment toward the ex-husband also affected her materially, because she had to fight and go to court to get even her little portion of the money that they had accumulated. So sometimes these resentments do affect our pocketbook, our amount of money we have, or our house, or furnishings that we have, whatever it might be. So in your case, were your worldly goods or material or money affected in any way? Just check it, yes or no. The 4th part of column 3, are you ready? That's emotional. And more than likely, since you put that person down on this chart, it also affects you emotionally. So probably that one is checked most of the time. The last part of this one is, it does that person, place, thing, or situation affect your sexual relationships? If it's your sexual partner, more than likely that is checked. If it was your mom, it may not be checked directly, but if you're mad at somebody, how can you be available in a sexual relationship? So it may be indirectly, and that's okay too. You check it. That is column 1, 2, and 3, explained from a resentment point of view. Now flip over and let's talk about fears just a minute. And some of the examples there. The first column is the same. What are you afraid of? And again, that is people, places, things, or situations. And I think I've had all kinds of fears that people have put in these columns. Some were afraid of the dark. They were scared to death when the sun went down. Some are afraid of being abandoned. Some are afraid of not doing the 12 steps correctly. Some are afraid of dying. Some are afraid of God or the devil, or whatever their religious views might be. So it doesn't matter what your fear is, you put it down on this piece of paper. And again, for column 2, you explain in a word or two, a phrase or two, why you put that person, place, thing, or situation down as a fear. Just enough to remember when you start explaining this with the 5th step. The 3rd column is the same with this fear. Does that fear affect your self-esteem? Does it affect personal relationships? Does it affect your material or worldly goods? I've had many females that I have worked with who were afraid of success, and therefore it did affect their worldly goods. They were afraid to go ask for a raise. They were afraid to go back to school to get a different degree. They were so afraid it affected them because their self-esteem was so low. Emotionally, probably so. Sex relations, maybe, maybe not. It depends. All right, turn the page and let's do the last one. I think you're seeing the pattern here, right? We do the very same thing for all three parts: resentments, fears, and conduct. I want to tell you a little bit about conduct first, meaning how this chart got to be created in the first place. There were two men I heard that went to an Al-Anon convention. One was named Joe and the other was named Charlie. And during the weekend, they decided to try to create a chart, a simple metrics, so that they could give out to people they sponsored, something that helped take a moral inventory. And they used the Blue Book of Alcoholics Anonymous to do so. And when they put their chart together, they said, review of our sexual conduct. Now, Joe and Charlie are males. And as you know, in our culture, males are dominant and sex is a major part of the male anatomy. Do I need to say any more about that one? So sex conduct is a huge piece for males. Now, we females might not feel exactly the same way. For instance, we have done wrong to other people, and that's what this one's about. What conducts have we done that aren't right, that are really pretty bad? Who have we harmed is the big question here. And females might not use sex in the same way as men do, but we do other wrongs for other people. For instance, females are the embezzlers of the world. If you're watching television, they're talking about somebody that got arrested for embezzling money. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a female. Females have learned how to get what they need by going in the back door, and embezzlement is one of those ways. I worked with another sponsee one time, and her conduct reflected shoplifting. She was a nurse or a former nurse. She had plenty of money, but she shoplifted all the time. By the way, I found out from her how shoplifters do it. I had no clue how they did it. I've learned a lot sponsoring people, and that's one of them. But it's all of this is all about the wrongs that you have done. And that's what you put down here. It doesn't have to be sex, but it could be sex. I even put something down on mine that was sex. One time I wanted my husband to go to Europe with me on a trip and to bring our son. And he was hesitating. He'd never been out of the country before. He was a little bit afraid of doing that. He never had a passport, didn't know the process. So I promised him that I would have sex with him in every country. And he fell for it. He got a passport. He came with me the whole time. So see, I was manipulating him by using sex. So can females do that too? Oh, yes, we can. So here's what we do. It's the same thing with our conduct. Does that, what we have done and the harm we've done others, affect our self-esteem? Yes. Personal relationships? Yes. Material and worldly goods? Many times. Emotion? Of course. Sex relations? Maybe. So all you do again with column 3 is you check those off. And I have done harm for this person, that person, whatever the harm may be. Now I'm going to stop there and see if Pat wants to say anything about it before we open it up for Q&A.
Yep, I think you've done it beautifully. You know, the thing we do is just do the best we can with the stuff that bubbles up in our heads today. Next week or the week after or the month after, something else may bubble up, and that's absolutely fine. So what we did want to open it up was, do you have any questions? Do you have any thoughts about what we've gone over so far? What we're going to do is open the floor up as we normally do. If you want to use your digital hand to say, you know, I want to share. If you have called in, Ava is watching the email. So if you've called in like I have, but you're only on a cell phone or a landline, then you can always email that anatomy 12-step 2022 at gmail.com, and we'll get you into the discussion. So I want to open the floor up. Has anybody got any thoughts, any ideas, any questions related to what we've been going over? All right, it looks like we've got one. Let's see, who was first? Lucky?
Good night, everybody. Thank you. But I'm so sorry I forgot to change my name, but this is Majo, MJ, Maria, whoever one of you call. Thank you so much, not to crosstalk, but thank you so much to our fellow service people. Thank you very, very much for all the work that you're putting together and everybody that is behind this. It's been a fantastic journey. I do have some questions. I have a Bible of the charts that I started doing, and I have a lot of things, but I get a little bit stuck sometimes, mainly with column 3, especially with personal relationships, like this thing in the church, personal relationships, sex relations, and emotional, mainly on the part of resentment and fear. I think sex relationship was more clear in the part of or moral conduct, but sometimes I'm trying to like think of examples for personal relationships that how can I feel threatened by that? And also emotional, I have the question of if, for example, if somebody, let's say my father did something that not only like I felt emotionally unsafe, but also physically unsafe, in which column should I put physically unsafe, like in a violent situation? So I think those are a little bit of my questions, mainly column 3 for fear and resentment. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, I kind of want to respond to that, even though we're not supposed to crosstalk. But this is a study group, so I'm going to go ahead and respond. One of the things I suggest to people is just do the best you can. This is not something that has to be perfect. You're not going to be graded. You know, look at the columns, and if you think your self-esteem was threatened, check it off. If you think your personal relationships were not checked off, that's fine. Leave it blank if you don't know. Usually when I sit down with somebody and I'm doing a step 5, we'll go over that, you know, and I usually will ask them the question, you know, well, was this anger that you had towards blah, 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 blah? Were you able to be present with your child or present with your husband when you were so pissed off? You know, so does the anger affect my personal relationships with other people? Yeah. You know, if I'm really angry at mom, I can't, you know. So anyway, we share a lot when we go back and forth in step 5. So just do the best you can. It really is very simple. Take a guess. Yeah, I think it's right. You know, I mean, I got in front of my sponsor and I went, I don't even know why I checked this. You know, I can't remember. And that's okay. It's not, you know, we're graded, and you're not going to get your doctorate by finishing off this paperwork. Madeline, you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I do. And I think, you know, if we're afraid of something physically, because of physical harm, that's going to definitely come out in column 2, because that's why that person is on there. Or in her case, I would think it would be in the fear page because of being fearful of her dad and maybe the harm he may cause.
Thanks for your service.
So
Good night, everyone. Yeah. You're welcome.
Don't know what all that was about, but anyway, that was my comment. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you very much.
All right. You're welcome. Ami, you got a question or a thought?
Yeah, I had a question just in regards to the conduct or review of conduct column. I'm assuming that, you know, who we harm could also be ourselves. You know, I have a history of self-harm, so I'm assuming that was okay. And I did one. I mean, I understand we're doing the best we can, so, but I just didn't know if there was any feedback on that. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah, let's
Go ahead,
talk about that one too, okay? Definitely, I would say that many of us probably will put ourselves down, especially on the resentment page and especially on the conduct page, because we have harmed ourselves by carrying lies and attitudes that are going to come out when we do this fourth step. And we have not treated ourselves well. You know, we've listened to that critical parent much too much. So I think putting ourselves down is huge and probably normal for all of us. Some sponsees want their people to put that one down first. Doesn't matter to me, but yes, definitely put yourself down. Pat?
Yep, I agree with you. Good job. All right, any other questions or thoughts or fears? No?
I guess I do have a question. Hi, I'm Taha, adult child. My question is, like as I've gone through the steps in a different fellowship, and so I'm just wondering if, as I'm looking at these things kind of newly and kind of the same situations or people that I've already made amends with and all of that come up, should I put them down or not? I guess I should, right? If they're showing up to, if it's like a feeling, right? I should put it down.
That is a very good question. And that was one that I had also. What I was told was, if I still am carrying a resentment, even if it's a little bitty one towards this person, put them down. But if I'm not carrying any resentment at all, and they're there and it's no big deal, and then don't put it down at this point. Okay. One of the things that I have learned about the fourth step and the fifth step is I take this thing over and over. It's not like I do it one time and I'm going, woohoo, I'm done with that. To me, what I was learned, or what I was taught, was in step 10, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it. So what that means is the personal inventory is taking step 4 and 5 again, for me talking to somebody, and then do 6, 7, 8, 9, and make my amends. And sometimes I have to let go of it again and let go of it again. I was taught these crazy thoughts, these crazy ideas, and I practiced them for 40 years. They were really imprinted in my brain when I came in. So are they always there? I believe so. But the more I practice this program, the less they are dominant. So they become easier to take care of. It's like getting a new pair of shoes. They're just much more comfortable as I practice this over and over. But I do that fourth step many, many times. You want to add to that, Madeline?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I would say too. It's if it doesn't bother you today, then no big deal. And I want to say something at the end too, Pat, but let's go ahead and get Kaya's question too.
All right, Kaya, what you got?
Hi, my question is on the review of conduct. Is it helpful to kind of put themes down as opposed to like every single individual incident? I feel like there isn't enough paper on planet Earth for me to write down, every single incident. So, if controlling my children is like a theme as opposed to like every single controlling thing I've ever done, do you recommend like putting down the theme instead?
I'll start with that one, Pat. I think the whole point of this chart is to show me patterns, my patterns. So I think you also notice how many spaces do you have per page? 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm doing this step. I just get more paper.
That's right. But we only gave you, what, 2 sheets for resentments, 2 for fears, and 2 for conduct, which means you can't put every individual person, place, thing, or situation down. So yes, as you see the patterns, that's what we want you to see. So it can be all of the in-laws, or all of the neighbors, or all of the people at church. And that's what comes up. And that's okay, as long as you see the patterns, which we'll do with steps 4, 5, and 6. Own some of the incidences that you're putting down, on columns 1, 2, and 3. So good question.
Thank you.
There's another one I think related to this, and that is, how long does it take to do the 4th step? Anybody want to know that one? Anybody want to ask that one? I get that question all the time, and y'all are just sitting there, or I'm not seeing anything. Okay. The 4th step chart to me is the step that probably takes the longest time to fill out. Most of the people that I work with, they can't do it in one sitting, because after a week of putting all these people down, 2 weeks later you may remember Aunt Susie in the middle of the night, and she made you so mad at your wedding, and you'd forgotten all about Aunt Susie until it finally came up. It just takes time to get all of our resentments, all of our fears, and all of our wrong conduct down on paper. So if it takes several weeks to do this, that would be normal from my experience. I've heard some people say you can do all of the 12 steps in one weekend. I could not have done that one at all, because I think a lot of this is just looking at myself. I had not really looked at myself before I did the 12 steps. I had no idea what I thought, what I felt, what I might have been ashamed of, or guilty of, or afraid of. I was so numb when I came into recovery. I didn't know the answers to these questions. So I had to feel them out, sleep them out, let them come up kind of naturally. And it took several weeks for me to do this chart. Pat?
Yep. And for me, I'm like Madeline, the vast majority I could do pretty quickly. And as she said, then in the middle of the night, I remember this one. And to me, it's an open-ended thing. It's not done. And that's, I think, the mistake that many of us make. I'm going to do this now, and it's going to be over. No. The 4-step chart helps me learn how to use this process in whatever comes up in the future. Next week, next month, next year. So it's an ongoing tool that I have in my arsenal now to get rid of stuff. The first time I went through it, it didn't take me weeks. I think I was supposed to meet with my sponsor. I worked on it a little bit. I went back to work because I was a workaholic. And I may have added 1 or 2 things to it. It ultimately took me I had to drive 3 hours to get to my sponsor, and then I would crash and then come back home, So I was having a little trouble getting it started because I was afraid. Anyway, so I'm writing it on my pad in my lap on the way home. So I had a lot of the resentments. I felt like I was going to have tons of resentments and not much fear. It turned out the other way around. But, you do the best you can. You write it down. Other stuff will bubble up. We write that down. Other stuff will bubble up. We write that down. So, Emily? Yeah.
So you kind of did a little bit of spoilers there. My question, my thought is, this stuff is going to come up again and again, right? If somebody makes me mad, if somebody made me mad a year ago or a week ago, the same person might make me mad, or somebody else might make me mad next week. Maybe while I'm working on the step, maybe I finish my steps. Can you shed a little light on that?
Yes, let me start with that one.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll chime in after.
Yes. Okay, and then both of us. Emily, what is going to happen with doing this step is you'll see your own patterns. And then down the road, then that same,
sprinkles and toast on you.
hold on, I'll mute her.
I got
Okay.
it. I got it.
Got it, okay. So down, you know, when you see that same person doing that same crazy thing in 2 weeks, you'll know the pattern to look beyond it. And that pattern will show up when we do this next week, steps 4, 5, and 6. It becomes so clear. And that's what I think is so great. Pat?
Yeah, I agree with her. Sometimes in life, you know, somebody will smack me again. Oh, you know, and the first thing I do is react. That's the normal pattern I've always had all my life. But now, in fact, I created something today just as a reminder. I have a bulletin board in my bathroom. Hortensia is seated, you know, and in that bathroom, I write things down for me to remember. And one of the things is to remember that when life throws or hits me with a 2x4, as my sister says, you know, breathe, okay? Take a second. For me, zip my mouth and shut up, because I can get real, my fangs will come out. So shut my mouth, go back and work the steps. I'm powerless over what this person thinks. I'm powerless over what they say. I'm going back to step 1 for me, you know, and then I start doing step 4. I'm angry at them. You know, I have a tool I can use to pull me out of that pain. Okay, I think Hortensia, I think you're next.
Hi, I'm Hortensia, ACA and codependent. My question is, like, I'm such a I don't know if it's perfectionism or just it's my nature to be very meticulous with things. Like, your chart is like this. I put it in Excel in the other way around so that I had more space to write and make big columns, you know? So, and so I don't just put like the little X on the thing, like on column 3. I check and then I write why I checked, you know? So it's like, is it better to just check and do it quick? Or is it better to check and reflect on each little thing that you're writing? Because sometimes that kind of makes my 4th step take a little longer to do because I'm really doing it thoroughly.
Melanie, you want to start that one?
Okay. I think it kind of depends on the person. One time I had a sponsee who did her chart. Now notice that there are 3 sections to the chart, maybe 1 or 2 pages of each. She came to my house with 25 pages of her 4th step chart. The whole point of this is for y'all to see your own patterns. And if you really want to start out that way, maybe that's okay. But in the end, it's not going to be necessary because you'll see your pattern in each of the specific things that have happened. The pattern is what's so important.
And I agree with Madeline. Sometimes I used to get so caught up in detail that my sponsor said, Pat, you're focusing on the problem, not the solution. Because I wanted to write down everything about the problem. I've got to make sure that all my details are taken care of, you know, because this is a dissertation and I might not pass and graduate and blah, blah, blah. You know, that's not the point. It's just like Madeline said. The point is the process, the solution. That's the point. So like Madeline said, you only have one little box. Just write down, they lied. They cheated. You know, the details. He went down to the bank and he borrowed $400 and took it out of my account. But, you know, that's not important. It's important he stole and it pissed you off. Does that make sense? Okay, I think
Yes,
Catherine's
thank you.
next.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everybody. This is Catherine. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic and a recovering codependent. And I was fearful that this chart would really overwhelm everybody, which it's overwhelming me when I really look at it. But it's really not in the details. Like, if you just look at the title at the top, like resentments, you know, like, do I have resentments? well, I didn't think I did, but I ended up having a lot of resentments on further investigation. Okay. And then like fear is like, I thought I was like one of the bravest people I know. And I found out that I was so fearful about so many things I couldn't believe. I was shocked. I was shocked. And then like review of my conduct, when I quit pointing the finger at other people and I started looking at my own conduct, that's when things really started opening up and revealing that guess who the problem is in all these 3 topics, these 6 pages? Me. It's me. And you know, it's really hard to, like in the beginning when you have all that mixed up, you know, emotion, it's really hard to say that I am the problem, but I was the problem in my life. And I didn't get to that point until, you know, I don't want to spoil it for everybody, but I really didn't get to that point until after, you know, like into the 5th step. So just be patient. You do have to take it like it's like needles in a haystack. You do have to find them and you do have to put them down, and just it's like a self-discovery, really. It's not as overwhelming as it looks. If you read the descriptions and just kind of keep it simple, like Madeline and Pat had mentioned, you know, just keep it simple. Like, why do I feel yucky? Why do I feel yucky when this happens? The same thing happens to me over and over and over. Why do I involve myself with the same kind of situation over and over and over? Like, how does that happen? So it's really, today something happened and it was like, oh my God, it's the same person that always pisses me off. And I got into the same thing. It's like, how does that happen? You know, like, I don't know. It's crazy. I mean, it's a bit insane, but it is like a trail of breadcrumbs that you can follow and you can get to the core and the root of the problem. It's a discovery. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Catherine.
sharing, Catherine. All right, I think Vernell is next.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Vernell from the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Glad to be on here. Good discussion. So I just want to share a little bit of my experience. You know, I worked the steps in CODA through their green workbook. I worked them in CODA with a group in groups. These were in groups through the Melanie Beatty's guide through the 12 steps. I've worked the ACA 12 steps in a group. But before I did that, I then worked this similar chart with a sponsor. And when I first looked at it, I was totally overwhelmed and thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. But talking to someone that knew, and I did have to ask questions. And what I love right now, what's happening in this group is that 2 people that have been doing this for a long time are breaking this down so simply. And I had to learn because, like some other people have said, I'm a very detailed person and I wanted to write it all out too, but I stuck to what I was told. I wrote my conduct. Who did I harm? All 3 children. I put them all together, right? I had to break it down and then I put short reasons why. And that was hard for me, but it worked because then when I did my 5th step, I could elaborate on it. I could bring it up and bring it out with a sponsor. So I just wanted to say, I really am appreciating the way this has been broken down so simply, and it's so even to the point that you only do to column 3 right now, then we go to the rest. Guys, I have to learn, as it was said, that Madeline in the beginning, keep it simple, and that was hard for me. When I first did mine through the CODA Green Book, it took me 9 months. Now I didn't have a sponsor and I was doing them in a group. I just couldn't get to doing it and couldn't figure it out because I was alone, and we're not alone anymore. Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing. I think next was Madeline's hands up, and then Carrie, and then Kendall.
Oh, my next, wow, okay. what I wanted to do is ask, I'm looking here on my screen, and I know there's some other people sitting here with us tonight that have done this chart this way. So I would love for them, if we have time, and I think we might, time to just share. Did they have that same kind of fear going into this? Did the chart itself help you see the patterns in your life? Was it hard to do the chart? Was it easy once you got started? So I wanted to open it up to some of these other people that I can see sitting here, and I know they have done this chart. That's all I want to do. Carrie?
Carrie, you're next. Yeah.
Hi, Carrie, ACA and AA. And this exercise, I really have enjoyed this exercise. And like you say, finding patterns. And what the patterns are 12 out of the 14 characteristics of an adult child. But the light bulb that went off, which I really have to sit with deeply, is when this all started. And then thinking about all of that, and then how, you know, the thought process of what is love, how you don't feel loved, how you feel abandoned. I mean, it all just came together, like hit me in the face. And so that was kind of eye-opening. I've been trying to kind of get my head all around it, but I definitely need to have a sponsor and talk about these sheets with somebody. So thank you for the exercise. It was very helpful.
Great. All right. Any other questions? Any other thoughts?
Kendall had her hand up.
Oh, that's right. Kendall, I'm sorry.
There she is.
Hey, thank you so much, Madeline and Pat and everyone else for their service work. I greatly appreciate it. And this summarization of doing the chart, and I did work this chart. It only took, 30 years to get me to do it. I started in 1992 or 91, my first Overeaters Anonymous program, and I had a sponsor, but it was focused on what I was going to eat the next day. So we never did get to the steps. Their goal is work on abstinence first and then the steps. So anyway, whenever I've been a part of a fellowship where that was the case, I didn't get anywhere. I was too angry and too afraid. I wasn't going to tell you I was afraid, but I was sure happy to tell you how angry I was. And I didn't say that it was me who was angry. It was what these other people had done that was making me angry. If they didn't do this, I'd be fine. Why won't they do this? Is this the moral and ethical thing to do? And they're not doing this. But finally, when my life was just so incredibly fractured, a new level of depression, and came a different level of surrender, and finally getting into relationship recovery, which is for me, Coda Al-Anon and ACA. And I still went, well, okay. And I kept thinking, even though I'm able to read, I kept seeing or thinking that step 4 was actually step 9. I kept thinking step 4 meant that's when I have to write everything down and apologize to these people. And I said, I had 3 sponsors, and I started off, I am not apologizing to so-and-so about such and such. So I would do steps 1, 2, and 3, but I was not doing step 4 because it was not my fault. But I was the one who was so profoundly depressed. So finally I did work with step 4, and I wouldn't do it. Someone finally said to me, Kendall, you're making this way too hard. And no, I didn't do step 4 in 2 hours, but they said you can have the first 3 columns of this chart done in 2 hours. You just have to sit, pen to paper, and start. And you'll be done in 2 hours. You're making way too much out of this. I said 2 hours, there is no way. But there was a way when I was finally willing. So I sat down there and I did most of it in 2 hours, pages and pages pages, and my sponsor said that she had someone with 4 more pages than me. And I said, well, I can write some more. But she got me to see that there are patterns that are repeated with those check marks in columns 3 and columns 4. And I still don't enjoy doing step work, but it's a huge relief. And she kept reassuring me, Kendall, there is nothing fundamentally wrong with you. It's how you are thinking. And we have flawed thinking, which was taught to us, which is generational, which is not our fault. But in recovery, we have a choice to recover and a choice to be willing to surrender and think about things differently. Thanks for letting me share.
Good. Thank you for sharing, Kendall. I think Ellen is next.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm in Southern California, where the weather's been gorgeous. Well, it's been like 12 years since I worked on my steps. Actually, it was January and February I was working on them 12 years ago. But I remember the first time I did my steps, I did it with a group of women in AA. We had this workbook and this other book. And the one thing that I kept hearing was, you need a sponsor, but I was terrified to ask anybody to be a sponsor. First of all, I was going to have to tell this person all kinds of stuff that I didn't want to share because I had fear of rejection and all that. And when I met my sponsor and she gave me this chart to do, I asked her I met her in September and December. I finally asked her and I got the worksheet and I was working on it and I looked at it. I mean, I tried the best I could, but I remember her saying, you just pick a few, like 7 of them. And so I did. And there was the county schools in North Carolina. That was one of them. And then, of course, the other people in my life. And it was simple. And there was no, the fear that I had, it was real, but I faced it. And it's one of the best things I did working on this chart because it did make it simple. It wasn't as, like when I did the AA steps that time, that was so overwhelming. This wasn't as overwhelming. And I had a hard time with the next set, which we'll be talking about next week. I left that to work with my sponsor that day when I met her to do my 5th step. But yeah, there's patterns. I, was able to see my patterns and I don't know, this freed me. I mean, it just freed me from a lot of my stuff in my past. And another thing, like over time, different things have come up that I needed to do a 4th step on, not a whole lot, but just every so often over the years. So I'm glad for this, thankful that I had the sponsor I had and able to use this chart. I mean, I see people I work with sponsees and they just really want to make it complicated and use the yellow book in ACA and other things. And it's like, there's a simpler way. But yeah, and it's hard. Yeah, I'm thankful. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for sharing. I think Abby's next.
Hi, everybody. I am Abby. I'm a recovering codependent and an adult child from the Atlanta area. And I'm so grateful for this step. I'll pretty much be echoing what so many have said who have done this before. I did a step study with a very small group, and it was very helpful, but it was just it was a good entree into my recovery. And then I did the steps with a larger group, and it went on, and everybody just, the dissertation, like you were going to confession. And when I saw this chart, I did the same thing, not having done it yet, I felt like I needed to explain to my sponsor who I was and who everybody else was and go into the greatest of details. But with hindsight being 2020, this is such an amazing tool because you do keep it simple. You just focus on the present, focus on one box at a time, one page at a time, one step at a time. So everybody else, I concur. Great questions for the people who haven't done it yet. Excellent questions. And I'm so grateful for this program and for this for being a part of this anatomy and recovery in general. So thank you very much for letting me share.
Thanks so much for sharing, Abby. That was wonderful. All right, I think Janice is next.
Hello, I'm Janice, a codependent from Boston, recovering. And this is my one and only time that I've ever done the steps. And I just want to share some of my own experiences. There is a reason this is called a step program. Take it one step at a time. And you're not going to be ready for step 5, 6, and 7 until you work 1, 2, 3, and 4. And like all of us codependents, we want to jump ahead and make sure we have it all figured out. Try not to do that. Just take it a step at a time and it will work. And the other thing is take it a day at a time. And I dreaded the amends part, and I'm to that part now. And you know what? Now that I've gone through step 4 and 5, it's okay. It'll be okay for you too. So keep it simple, like they said, and you're going to enjoy the relief. Thanks for letting me share.
Great. Thank you so much, Janice. All right, I think Jane is next and then Carrie.
Hi, I'm Jane, codependent. And I just wanted to really say one quick thing. I know when I worked this chart, my sponsor had said to me in talking about the cause, you know, there's no need to write down the whole story. You can see there's only a tiny bit of space here. So you can't put the story in that space. Just boil it down to the core. Now, the thing that was very powerful about that, because my goodness, how many times had I told that story over and over in great detail and run it through my mind? But when I boiled it down to the core and I stuck with the chart, just simply putting checks, in the long run, that process made it very easy for me. I shouldn't say very easy, but it made it much easier to process future resentments or fears because I had boiled it down to the core. I don't know that that makes sense at this point, but I think when you work it, it will start to make sense. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Jane. I appreciate that. All right, Carrie and then Laura.
I just wanted to share a little story. I'm working with the AA program too. And so I decided that I was going to join their book studies. And, you know, you're supposed to start, you know, I would read my 12 steps here, but the book study is on step 9. So that's where I started in the book study. And it was very eye-opening because everybody was so honest and talked about, you know, issues. And, you know, my thought was, I was justified to be angry, you know. No, in step 9, they're all getting ready to, you know, make amends and everything too. And it's like, no, I'm not going to make amends. I was justified in my anger. But then when I stopped and thought about it and being a reactor instead of an actor, my reaction was really part of the problem in the argument. And I thought I was justified with my anger. And I guess, you know, sometimes I do feel that I'm justified in my anger, but just how I react to the person is key. So that was really eye-opening, and I still have a lot of work to do. So thanks for letting me share.
Great. Thanks for sharing. All right. Laura and then Madeline.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Laura from Louisiana, codependent and adult child. I guess the comment that I want to make, I would really like to ask a question, but I don't want to encourage the crosstalk. And the question would be maybe for after the program is just feels really bad. It just feels really awful, the whole thing. I can start, and I guess to what degree is, that necessary, okay, common. At any rate, I can certainly see patterns emerging. I started doing my step 4 work using the yellow handbook workbook. And when I got this homework, I just took the information that I had done on there and regrouped it with this format. And this is really working in my patterns. My patterns are becoming very, very clear. But anyway, I just wanted to make the comment how awful it is. And if anyone had anything to share about their step 4, just feeling really terrible, might be helpful. Thank you.
And just for my clarity, I want to make sure I understand. It feels awful, Laura. Can you tell me what you mean by it feels awful?
Thank you, Pat, for your question. Sad, hurt, angry, guilty, regret.
Okay. So the feelings are coming up. Okay, that's good. That's good. And the nice part is with the sadness and the feelings, a lot of the sadness is it's not turning out the way I want it. So that's a fear. So these are great things. Just put it down on the chart and call your sponsor. Anybody else? Madeline, you want to address that too?
Yes, I do. I was taking notes thinking, oh, I want to say this, I want to say this. And she brought that one up, and that's really true. I tell people that I sponsor that this is a hard step. And it's hard because we have to remember the bad things that have happened in my life. We have to put it on the table. So we have to regurgitate all of that crud back up so that you can process it a different way. And it's not fun, and it does hurt, and it is sad. But the whole problem and the whole purpose of this is so that we can look at it a different way. That was one thing. So I'm glad Laura brought that one up. The other one is, are we justified for the anger for the abuse that's been done with us? Let me speak to that piece too. I've worked with many people who were sexually abused as teenagers or as adults, and they have their abuser down on their paper, of course. And they said, I don't want to not hate him. I hate him for what he did with me. And I said, what he did with you is wrong. I totally agree. But we're not addressing what they have done to us. We're not addressing the perpetrator, the abuser. We're addressing your resentment toward the perpetrator and the abuser. There's a whole different thing going on here. We're only looking at our wrongs, not theirs. And I don't know how many people I have worked with that were sexually abused, and sometimes along the way, that abuser got tried, convicted, and then sent to prison for it. So what they did was wrong in our society's eyes. That's not what we're doing with the 4th step. The 4th and 5th step is about us. It's not about the abuser or those other people that have actually hurt and abused, perpetrated us. Yes. Does that make sense?
It's carrying the resentment. It's killing us. Anytime I have resentment in here, it's hard for me to also have serenity, peace, empowerment. So it's getting rid of the resentment. But you're absolutely right. What they did was wrong. All right. I think Catherine is next, and then Hortensia, and then Jen.
Yeah. Hi, Catherine. I'll just make it real quick. If you feel really icky, you're probably doing it right. because it did bring up for me a lot of blame and shame growing up, and a lot of things that I had really shoved down. I mean, really put back and didn't really realize. I didn't see myself as a victim. Well, when I started looking at my resentments, then I realized just how victimized I was growing up. And that felt bad. And the other thing that felt bad was realizing how long I had stayed in the patterns of resentment and blame and anger. And so that felt bad. You know, everything does feel bad because you realize that I felt like I really wasted a lot of time, you know, and that felt bad. You know, it's not going to feel good about, you know, looking in the past. I mean, most people just skim the surface and never really get, you know, they say what an unexamined life is not worth living. Well, guess what? An examined life can really be the pits, you know. I mean, it's not easy. So no, this is not an easy stop. It's not something that's going to make you feel good. Eventually you will, you know, go further into your recovery by doing it, and maybe keeping that as, you know, as a reward at some point, because it is definitely worth it. Thanks for letting me share.
Okay, I think Hortensia is next. Wait a minute, is that right? And then Jen. No,
Okay.
Jennifer's next. Or did Hortensia? Your hand disappeared.
Okay, so I think, was it Laura who made the question? And I hope this is not cross-talking, it's just answering how I feel about her question. My experience, when Pat was saying about how sometimes we procrastinate on step 4, she said about there's some scary words that she made some suggestions on how we can change them. And also that it takes time, and we're like, I don't have time. And I was thinking to myself that another reason is because it's very uncomfortable to feel the feelings that come up. And for so many years before recovery, I lived detached from those emotions. And I would, instead of sitting in the discomfort of emotions, I would work and overwork and overwork. So that was my go-to thing, and it still is. And so I think emotions, one of the things that this step brings as well is to teach us how to sit in the discomfort of all of this and to let it run through us instead of grabbing a coping mechanism like people, control, and things. Instead, sitting, allowing that discomfort of the emotions that rise up and learning from them as a compass. They're pointing us the direction. This fear, this shame, this guilt, all this is really giving us advice. And so when we learn to sit in the discomfort of it while we do 4th step, they are giving us advice, these emotions, as uncomfortable as they are. And so my counselor used to tell me, try to first learn to feel, because when you feel right, then you can think right, and then you can act right. So that's my take on it.
Good, thank you for sharing. All right, Jennifer or Jen, you're next.
Hey y'all, this is Jen from Fayetteville, North Carolina. I will tell you, I'm the queen of procrastination, and I have been putting this off and putting this off and putting this off. I'd work a little bit on it, and I'm actually in treatment for PTSD. And quite honestly, all the emotions and stuff that were brought up, I really thought I may have ended up in the hospital. I too did not feel. I masked everything, stayed busy, and every time feelings would come up, I really thought they were going to swallow me whole. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this, but I promised my sponsor that I was not going to quit, and I'm not a quitter. And I just want to encourage everybody to keep on doing it. In therapy, my therapist had also suggested, and I know you guys have heard this stuff before, as far as writing a letter to someone that has hurt you or that you're angry at. And that for me was like, it opened up a gate. And I was able to start feeling my feelings. And when I first started the step, I was just like, oh, so-and-so did this to me, and it was all about everybody else. But I had a huge epiphany, and this program really is about us. It's really not so much about the other people. It's about us. And I know those feelings can be so scary, and you feel like you're going to drown, but I promise you, you will feel so light. and so clear after just doing it. So do it afraid, just do it. And just write, journal if you have to get that stuff out. And then the stuff just started flowing. And I feel, I'm going to cry. I feel the best that I have felt in my entire life with the burdens that I've had. And I'm not finished with this step, but the epiphanies I had and the things that I saw about myself were very humbling. And I will be eternally grateful to my sponsor and to this program. So I just wanted to share. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Jen. All right. Vernell, you're next.
Yes, I'm going to keep it simple with a few slogans and things that I like. Okay. I have to feel it to heal it. It was very, very difficult for me to do this as well because I didn't want to look at myself. I just read a Coda weekly reading that came in my inbox, and I liked this one phrase that this person put in there. Blame keeps wounds open and forgiveness lets them heal. And that's what this did for me doing 4 and 5. I quit blaming everybody else because I was creating the storm and I cried when it happened, but I was creating it and I didn't know it. And there's a pamphlet in ACA, and I can't find it right now, but it talks about, for the newcomer, about doing the healing work. This work for me is not for the faint of heart, but I'm telling everybody in here and myself, it is worth it. It is worth it. I'm worth it. You're worth it. Doing this work changed my life, and it continues to. So thank you guys. Thanks for these great questions tonight.
Sure. Abby, you hand your hand up, and then you put your hand down?
Yeah, I had a visualization that I kind of wanted to share. Initially, the thought popped into my mind that light and air is so cleansing. And so then I started thinking about, when I'm cleaning up the yard in the spring, and you get all the leaves that are stuck under the bushes in the dark, and you bring them out and they're wet and they're all glomped together and they're filthy. And once the sunshine and the air starts to hit them, they begin to separate. And they're so much easier to just sweep away. So that was just a visual that I kind of wanted to celebrate light and air.
Yeah, very good. You. And I agree with Abby. A lot of people say that this step was really hard and scary. The one thing my sponsor told me when my sponsor realized I was afraid of it was, Pat, do you want to get rid of the fear? Do you want to get rid of the anger? Well, yeah, just work the steps. So I got the impression of, it's not that hard. As Bill Wilson, Dr. Bob said, just keep it simple. And that's, I think you're right. Bringing some of this stuff up and realizing I'm really pissed off. And, I hated writing that stuff down. But I would tell you, we've got a speaker who's going to share when we get to step 5 about what it felt like before going into step 5 and the fears and carrying all this stuff and opening up my whole chest. I'm going to show everything. And then what it felt like after. And some of y'all who nod your head, if you've been through a 5th step and you've done it with someone, I felt more empowered. I felt more enlightened. Like Abby said, the leaves, it was a lot clearer. I felt good for you, Jim. We can see that we're not a flawed person. We can see that we've learned these patterns, and we now know how to get rid of them. Madeline?
Yeah, I know we need to begin to close out, but to me, this is like a spiritual awakening, this step. And I define a spiritual awakening as a moment of clarity. And this 4th and 5th step was my first big moment of clarity in this 12-step process. Thank you, Pat.
All right. Okay. I am going to close this out. It's about 9:30, and we've told y'all that we would go an hour to an hour and a half. So I'm just going to remind you, you've already got your paperwork for next week. So what we want you to do is just go ahead and work on the chart as best you can. What I'd like to do to close is I'd like everybody just kind of for a moment, just sit there and breathe deeply and listen as I say one of the versions of the Serenity Prayer that's on the ACA webpage. Today, I seek the serenity to accept the people I cannot change, the courage to change the one I can, and the wisdom to know that that one is me. Thank you guys very much. This has been a wonderful meeting. I appreciate it.